It's the Magic Morning Wood. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
It's
Hi. Yeah.
it's me, Clive Davis, and him over there.
I'm Ron. Hi. Hi, everybody. How Clive, best part of the show. How are you?
Good. How about you, Ron?
Great.
Gah, thank God. So, we're talking some films. What a fucking surprise, huh? So,
Yes.
and we're
Shocker.
reacting. So, yes, we managed to finally wriggle out of the cul-de-sac that we thought Dog
Oh,
Star Man had put us in. How
right.
do we possibly react to Dog Star Man? And it turns out it's actually not that difficult at all, really, which is
Right.
I thought it would actually be a slightly more
Well,
um
I think if we did it the right way, it would have been difficult. But
yeah, I think cheating helps.
yeah, we cheat. Yeah, cheating
Well,
definitely.
yeah, well, kind of. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so yes, so my reaction via Dog Star Man, yeah, mine was actually quite a cheat. Dog Star Man, the way we saw it is with all four parts and the prelude and everything kind of jammed together as a feature, right?
Right.
Um, and boy, what a feature that was. And so I chose something else that is also kind of made up of short films, and then has been presented as a sort of feature or a disc unto itself, right? Uh,
Right.
and this is the surprisingly quite highly regarded kind of cult favorite, the Beaver trilogy, which was shot between 1979 and 1985 by
Mhm.
Trent Harris out of Salt Lake City, Utah. So
Mhm.
so I suppose there's also we've there's been quite a lot of more money stuff going on the show recently. Um, so yeah, so this takes a certain amount of explaining. Had you watched any of these before by any chance?
No, I was quite shocked that I'd never even heard of this before. So it was, yeah. It seems like it's got quite the reputation that I have just went over my head. So.
Yeah, it's an odd one. It's yeah, it's cult. His cult has grown over the years, but it's also yeah, it hasn't seemed to have quite gone fully mainstream. I think because maybe the availability, I think, is the issue.
Right.
Like there's
It's
no
only available like on his website or something. So
yeah, and of course it's people have spread it and stuff
yeah,
online.
spread it and
Yeah,
torrented and stuff, right? So
but there's no official. And then so there's a documentary as well, which I'll mention. But I didn't get a chance to see, but there's a documentary as well, and that's the documentary is on Netflix, but the actual films it's referring to are not.
is it? Because I checked on Netflix, I couldn't find it.
Oh, it was on Netflix anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, it's in some territory, but it was released to
Oh,
Netflix, I know, when it was new.
right, right, yeah, yeah.
So anyways, so the story goes back in
Have you
19...
seen the making of the part four?
No, no,
No,
no, no. You? Did you manage to track it?
no. Well,
No.
no, I wasn't there.
All
Yeah,
right.
they couldn't even torrent it, so I don't know where it
I
is.
don't know what a torrent is.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't find it.
That sounds naughty and
I
illegal, and
could not find it legally,
right.
so
There we go.
I
You're on
stopped.
it.
I stopped looking.
Yes, that's right. As you well should have, young man.
Hmm.
So back in 79, Trent Harris, who I guess was working for a TV station in Utah, um, was like testing a camera or something in the parking lot of the uh, um, Channel 2 Salt Lake City TV station, right? And he just happened to start filming this guy who was there taking photos, Groovin Gary, who, is a kind of very, I don't know, hyper kind of wanting to be on TV kind of guy. And so the Beaver Kid, the first 30 minutes, the first short here, is a genuine document of the time,
Hmm.
where Trent Harris shot this kid, like, very exuberant young man, like doing impressions of John Wayne and, pretty,
Just alone.
yeah, pretty bog standard impersonations
yeah.
that everybody can do, really, right? But there's
Right,
something
sure.
about him. There's something a bit kind of infectious, and he has these kind of speech patterns, and he's always kind of
Yeah,
this,
he laughs a lot, and
yeah, he's like borderline annoying, but
Hmm.
because he seems like quite a nice guy,
yeah.
like there's something a little endearing about
Hmm.
Gary, and he insists on showing him his car as well, right? His decked out car with his, yeah, I got everything, got the 8-track and the CB. I think that's his CB handle, isn't it? Grooving Gary.
Yeah, right, something like that. Yeah.
Engraved Farrah Fawcett
Yeah.
windows and stuff like.
And who was on the other side? There was
Olivia Newton-John, I think.
Olivia.
Yeah,
Was it Olivia Newton-John on the other side?
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah.
who will come up again, right? So
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
so the story goes that um, you know, grooving. Obviously, Trent Harris was just, oh, okay, whatever. And but this was quite a big deal for this Grooving Gary guy. So he kept kind of bombarding Trent Harris, with phone calls and stuff. And then, so I'm not quite sure, because I haven't seen that. I'm not sure if so. In the other shorts that followed, it seems like he basically created this talent show, right?
Yeah. In the third one, it looks like he
Yes,
created it. But,
just to invite Trent Harris to come and film it.
right.
But I get a feeling from the original short doc that it was something that was happening anyway, right?
Well, in the original doc, you get the impression that it was actually he was hired to film this talent show.
Yes.
And it just happened to be that Trent was there, or sorry, not Trent. Proven Gary was there, right? So
I don't know, because in the short,
I don't know.
He does phone him up, right? And he says,
yeah, he does phone him up, yeah, but
so he invites him. Yeah.
It's unclear why this talent show exists.
Yes, but it's it's the kind of thing you would see in
small town
communities all over the world, right?
Sure, yeah.
So Trent Harris did go there with his cameraman, and they did film the talent show, which is exactly kind of what you'd expect from it, really. But the kind of the piece de resistance, right, is Groovin Gary comes on stage, dragged out as Olivia Newton-John,
but not like a surprise. Like you actually see him preparing backstage, getting a makeup on done by the local mortician. Yes, and his wig on, and you can tell he's relatively kind of uncomfortable with being filmed because he sort of keeps talking, oh well, I'm a man, but I just like to do this it's just for fun, it's okay for TV. That's kind of a theme, right? It's okay if it's on TV.
He brings it up again and again, and also it's interesting because you don't know, because he's protesting so much, you do wonder if he might be in some way, queer and hasn't come out, basically, right?
Or
he's just
he's talking about so or he's I mean, it's sort of implied in the other segments that maybe he's got some slack or got some flack from other other people for doing this type of thing, and maybe like he's worried about how he'll be seen. Who knows what the idea is? So,
but obviously he's as he's aware this is going to happen and is going to be filmed and stuff. He's obviously getting increasingly concerned that it might not go down so well in this small, apparently predominantly Mormon town as well, right? But it does go off, and he does film it, and then I suppose in terms of the original document, that's kind of about it, really. Like you don't see people reacting badly, you don't see anyone shouting at him, you don't see him.
He does the performance, and then you see him afterwards. He's got his makeup off, whatever, and then he's getting in his car and he's saying, "Okay, thanks for coming by. See you later." And that's the last you see of him, right? So
and that's about it. And you just think, oh, okay, I see. So then fast forward a couple of years, 1980.
But I think it's probably also worth mentioning that maybe his impression is maybe not as good as maybe he thinks it is or wanted it to be. I think that's kind of important, I think, right? So
yeah. No, he's clearly a very large fish in in
a very small pond.
Yeah.
So they seem to actually, in the original one, to kind of actually appreciate what he's doing, even though the general viewer can see that he's actually not very good at this, right?
No. I also get that feeling from the first doc that people are more or less just kind of not humoring him, but just kind of. I didn't get the feeling of any kind of animosity towards him from just the documentary.
From the other two, or that you get in the other two segments,
So then, basically, what happens 2 years later? They make Beaver Kid 2, starring a kind of on the cusp of stardom, Sean Penn, right? Oddly enough, we both chose Sean Penn films as reactions.
Yeah, that was also strange.
Yeah, we didn't plan that.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting as well because you could make the argument that Sean Penn's imitation of Groovin Gary seems to have kind of informed his Spicoli from
Spicoli, yeah. Well, because I was thinking, like, when as it's playing, and I'm looking at the two. Of course, the first person is Sean Penn, and the second is Crispin Glover. And I think, to be honest, I there has to be some kind of like, I don't know, serendipity or something like that. But I mean, looking at the actual Groovin Gary, and I would say, like, the two people that I would cast to play him would be Sean Penn in the 80s or Crispin Glover in the 80s, right? Which is like, it's just like those two actors are kind of, he had so strong elements of both of those people. When you think of, George McFly and Spicoli, basically he was like George McFly and Spicoli kind of mixed together. And I was like, so it was like inspired casting if he had already known what we know now from like today's standard, but he did this, but like basically before both of them exploded in these parts. It was like pre-Spicoli, or right around the time of Spicoli, and then pre-George McFly, like right around the same time, right? So it was, I don't know how he did it, but he just happened to find these two people who were right about to break and who were like the perfect castings for both of them. I think they both.
Right.
Yeah.
No. So we get Sean Penn doing Groovin Gary, and it's quite close. They even use footage from the talent show from the original, right? And it's a fairly close approximation. The only difference, and this is kind of interesting as well, is so the Trent Harris and cameraman character are immediately put in a much worse light in this, right? They're like, from the get-go, they're these kind of condescending, stoned outsiders who just think they're going to get a big laugh out of this guy kind of making a fool of himself, right? And as it carries on as well, you do, when it doesn't end badly necessarily, but it almost does, right? Because the character does almost commit suicide. So I haven't seen the doc. I didn't get to see it in time. We'll see if I get around to it or not. But poking around online and reading around it and stuff. So the way I understand this, I might not be 100% right here, but I think what happened, Groovin Gary did actually attempt suicide in real life, like a few months after the events of the first film. Also worth mentioning as well, though, that it was never aired, right? It was supposed to be shown on television. The original Beaver Kid documentary never did actually air. Now, whether this is because probably no one is fucking interested in showing it, but whether Trent Harris kind of had some pangs of conscience and thought, oh, okay, because again, even though we don't see it, maybe he was seeing people around him like reacting really badly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's such an kind of an interesting to talk about, I think, this piece, because like you don't know what's fabricated or what was based in fact, right? I mean, the fact that you take parts 2 and 3 and the elaborations or the that happened in those ones, you get the impression that he didn't get them from nowhere.
Right.
You get the impression that he didn't just make up, that. I mean, he tries to kill himself in both parts 2 and 3 the same way with a with a rifle, right? And also you've got people kind of being kind of condescending or kind of abrasive towards him and stuff like that. In both of them, more so in part 3, where it's like it gives him almost a backstory kind of thing. So, but I got the impression that he saw that, or it was sort of a reflection of his own opinion.
Yeah, well, so apparently he did commit suicide. He did attempt suicide, but failed. But it's interesting, isn't it, that immediately upon doing the second film, it's interesting that Trent Harris immediately puts himself in a bad light. I found that kind of interesting. Like it's like a mea culpa or something, isn't it? It's
right.
Like so you do wonder in making this thing again and again if he is kind of working through some kind of guilt that because he clearly gives him a happier ending the more the 3 films progress, right? Like the end of the third one is kind of, there's something kind of liberating about it, right? But yeah, so we get to the third one, 85. This is the Oakley kid. So for some reason or other, it's been relocated to Idaho, right? So rather than Utah and Beaver, we got mentioned that's the name of the town that Grooving Gary was from, right? That's what it's the Beaver kid. Now it's Idaho and Oakley. And Crispin Glover, I mean, I mean, Sean Penn was pretty good, right? But Crispin Glover, man, I mean, fucking
inspired, right?
Just nails this. Plus puts a little extra Crispin Stardust on it, right?
Sure, yeah, of course.
Like it's not quite Grooving Gary. It's already mutated into because Crispin Glover can't help himself, right?
Yeah. But again, this was the same year as Back to the Future, right? So
yeah, just before, I think.
Yeah. So it's like how did Trent Harris like find these guys like right before they both broke big, right? So it's
I think what happened, the way I understand it is it's important. I think there's a lot about this film which is more interesting to talk about than to actually watch in a way. But I think an important element of it is Sean Penn and Crispin Glover, they're both total Hollywood kids, right? Like they're like Sean Penn's father was like a TV director.
Right. Okay.
Glover's dad is Bruce Glover, of course. And they went to like Hollywood High and all that stuff. So they're like Hollywood kids through and through. Like they're second.
I see.
Kids. And then I think the original Beaver Kid tape kind of circulated. Like I think it became this kind of like now there's like a million things like this on YouTube and probably
right
out or whatever. But back in the day, it was kind of like a thing that would get handed around, or it was at party, stuff like that. So I think it became kind of like a real word of mouth Hollywood cult thing. And then these 2 super Hollywood kids, were just around, I guess. And Trent Harris was smart enough to kind of pick up on board of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, inspired casting, both of them, right? So
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So this one is the one, I suppose, it's the one closer to a like. I read
movie.
I read someone compared it actually to an after-school special, which actually kind of makes it the motive. It's closer to a movie. It's more dramatized. Courtney Gaines, isn't it?
Yeah. This kind of like guy in the like whoa in the background. He doesn't have
Malachi from Children of the Corn.
Which I assume he's also must be a Hollywood. I mean, they must have been all kind of like friends or something. I
think so. I think I get the feeling. And Elizabeth Daly from Valley Girl is in it as well, right? So And yes, so it's again, and so this one's, yeah, there's even more of a, like you said, there's more of a kind of backstory to the character, him sneaking out at the beginning, and yeah, it ends on a slightly more triumphant note. The suicide doesn't come off, and he kind of leaves town, you know, like, okay, you suckers, kind of thing, and is a bit more, you know, he goes into the local diner and does his I just don't know what to say, right? They all seem to do that.
Yeah, he embraces the cross-dressing element.
It's interesting that they all do that same, like, I'm wondering if there might be a famous bit of footage of Olivia Newton-John being interviewed or something where she said that specific thing. Oh, I just don't know what to say or something, because they always do that line, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Thing, you know.
Yeah. Actually, before this movie, I'd never even heard that song before. So, please don't keep me waiting. Yeah, I didn't know Olivia Newton-John passed Grease and Physical, so that's pretty much all I knew her from.
You mean you've never sat through the classic Xanadu, which Sean Penn has the poster of in the background behind him?
Right. No. Well, was that the one with Sean Connery?
No, that's Zardos.
Zardos. Yeah, that's what I got mixed up. Yeah. So no, I've never seen
Xanadu is a roller skate disco fantasy musical.
Oh right. Oh yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it. So
a classic. So yeah, so that's that's the shape of it, right? It's basically a real guy, two different reenactments, and like we said, over the years, this thing has kind of blown up. Trent Harris, because of the way I kind of found out about this was, so Trent Harris later made Reuben and Ed, right, with starring Crispin Glover, and that's another like huge kind of cult film thing, right? And I think lots of people were led back to the Beaver trilogy via Reuben and Ed. So yeah.
And had you seen Reuben and Ed?
I have seen Reuben and Ed. Have you seen Reuben and Ed?
No.
I've seen it the one time. I'd like to give it another go, because it is one of those ones, maybe similar to your reaction to With Nil and I, actually, is I remember seeing Reuben and Ed, and I think I quite liked it, but I was slightly bamboozled by like its reputation, like, because people fucking love that film, right? Like it's a Reuben and Ed fanatics, like, just, yeah, you wouldn't want to be cornered by one at a party,
right? Yeah.
But I just remember seeing it and thinking, yeah, I kind of get it. It's kind of wacky and different and weird, but I didn't quite fall in love with it. But I'm happy to give it another shot.
Right.
Yeah. So it's an odd one. This to what did you make of the Beaver? Was this something that, like, because
I'm mostly of two minds about this movie. So because I thought it was a really interesting sort of I mean, just as a piece, it's really, I think Phil Lord, Phil Lord of like Miller and Lord and Miller, they're like a filmmaking like team. They do a lot of stuff together. So he had an interview where he was talking about this apparently, and he said, I think what I totally agree with it, which is that it's a really interesting take on like how you can tell the same story from different perspectives, which just small changes and tell the same story, but and really change the story, but even just making subtle small changes. But and I'm totally a sucker for those types of things, like telling the same story from different perspectives or different, I love shit like that. So, when I was watching it, it was really interesting just to see taking the same story and really putting a different spin on it and telling it from a different way, using a different kind of camera, like a black and white versus color, different, more drama versus less drama, but still having kind of the same beats all the way through. And also,
similarly, I remember reading or hearing about, I can't remember where it was, some film program somewhere where they basically have the same script, the same dialogue, and even use the same actors, but they give 2 or 3 different film crews the shot of doing the same thing. And apparently it's quite fascinating to see how just the most minute differences.
Well, what's that film called?
No, that was like a film program or some
Oh, I see. Okay.
sort of yeah.
Yeah, I do like those types of activities in like drama classes of that, where you have like a set script, and then or like you give them like a 7-line script, and then they take those words or the lines and they have to make a scene around it based on that. So I mean, it's kind of interesting to see how he changed each time. And yeah, and yeah, it was just also, it was really sort of an interesting take on how you can take something like a real chance encounter and sort of create a piece of art around it, right? But so I don't know, it was interesting to watch. It was definitely an interesting, and also trying to figure out, as we were talking about, trying to piece together what the real story was after, based on what he kind of included in the second 2 parts, which was, I thought it was an interesting watch. At the same time, on the other mind, I found it hard to get through the fact that it all felt quite mean-spirited, the whole thing. Like, I mean, yeah. He, as you said in the second one, you think he was trying to almost like portray himself as being kind of mean about the whole thing, and maybe like kind of evil with it. Yeah. But I couldn't get through the fact that even just by doing it over and over again, that it was almost just, I didn't feel like he was sort of making penance for it. It was just that he just kept the joke going. What I mean? It was
the problem.
Yeah. I felt it was just sort of like, oh well, let's do it again, and let's do it again, and I found myself trying to like imagine what the real Groovin Gary would have thought of those other 2 parts. And I'm certainly, if I was Groovin Gary, I would have been, I feel like the what you call it, the suicide attempt would have come after those rather than before, right? So I don't know. So I don't know. I just felt I felt the whole thing was just everyone was just kind of punching down a little bit, So
yeah, that's an interesting take, and I think I can see where you're coming from, but it's just I found it kind of interesting from the get-go that because he puts those characters in a bad light, I felt that was what kind of leveled that out. But to that point, I think the other thing that's interesting about it is, on the one hand, yes, it's kind of an interesting exercise to see something done from 3, but then also on the other point, from the other, I was thinking, fuck, this is like, why would you keep going back to this well over?
Well, I think that's like, that's where I came from, is that, I mean, it's not that much of a story. It's just this kind of like
really, no.
low budget, kind of not very well done, talent show, and a guy who just wants to dress in drag and do it. So I think probably my opinion came from the fact that it's not a very interesting story in itself. So the only reason to keep coming back to it is to explain his obsession with this sort of thing is the fact that he just wants to keep making fun of the guy, right? Which is the only kind of, I think the only
I don't know. I mean, the thing with
explanation I could find. So
the Beaver trilogy part 4, which is quite a good title.
Yeah, that's why I really wanted to watch part 4, because I wanted to see kind of what I was missing, but I couldn't find it. So
well, you were saying about 2 minds, but again, I was in 2 minds. Like, on the one hand, I thought, yes, I want to know as well, but then on the other hand, I'm like, hang on, I'm just letting curiosity get the better of me now. Do I really want to sit through another 90 minutes about this entirely not really interesting event that happened back in, do you know what I mean?
1979, yeah, exactly.
It was almost like, on the one, if I'm honest, I really, really want to watch it, but at the same time, I was like, out of principle, I should just put foot down on myself and don't spend another 90 minutes on it. Do you know what I mean? Because it is so inconsequential. And so the Beaver trilogy.
But I think probably that's the documentary would explain, kind of give more answers to the why rather than the what. You know what I mean? So I mean, the what is not that important, but the why is interesting, I think. So and I think
sure I will.
And the how also, I think so. Yeah, I think the whole thing has an air of mystery about it that I really, really would like to know more about.
Yeah, I will cave in and watch it, I think. But again, it's one of those things as well, though, where there's a feeling of just being duped. Like at first you think, we've talked about this before, you assume there's more to it, but I don't know if there maybe actually really is. And you go on, as underseen as this is, you go on IMDb and you see the people who do like it. And I mean, they love it, right? Like people who love this film, I mean, they really dig it. They really think it's something special, right? And I don't quite, it's interesting as an exercise, and then on top of that, they kind of got lucky because they got Sean Penn and Crispin Glover. So that
of course,
if they'd have done it with two people who didn't go on to become famous, that probably wouldn't be as interesting, right?
Right, yeah.
So there's all these kind of, it got lucky in a lot of different ways. So I can see why it's a curiosity piece, and we're talking about it, so obviously it has us, but I don't quite get where it crossed over to, like, some people think it's some sort of weird kind of work of genius or something like that. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't go that far.
No.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of it's the whole thing makes me really curious about what happened and why. I think that's why they made a documentary, I think, because I think there's a lot of it's the reason that it exists makes me ask raises more questions than it answers, right? So I'd be really, so if you have a copy of the documentary, I'd love to see it. So
I'll send it your way if I find it in a perfectly legal manner, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Reading around it again, I heard things like, it is kind of interesting, because I feel as if apparently Trent Harris comes across like, maybe not entirely sympathetic or apologetic about, but at the same time, you do wonder why he keeps coming back, this itch. I think there's more to it than, I suspect there's more to it than just he just likes to make fun of this guy, because there's a whole bunch of other people you could make fun of, right? Like this, like Groovy.
Well, so that's why,
he isn't even that, like, tragic a figure, right? Like,
I don't know. I think it was the fact that, I mean, I was guessing that maybe the real Groovy Gary killed himself based on what he dramatized in parts 2 and 3. But if he didn't, I thought it almost felt like a bullying almost, you know what I mean? Like it was by adding that, it felt like almost like, oh, maybe you should kill yourself, almost like a suggestion, you know what I mean? So maybe I was reading into that a little more, but
I think the suicide attempt came prior to the
main priority. Well, must have, so right. So,
but again, you're quite right. It's a weird thing to, like, I don't know.
But even that, to include that, because like if the guy, if Gary kind of confessed to him, it's like, oh, I felt really bad about this, and then I ended up put a rifle in my mouth. I tried to commit suicide, but then it didn't do it. And then to take that kind of confession and then dramatize it not once or twice feels, I don't know, it compounds the feeling of being mean-spirited and strange, almost a bullying. The whole thing is almost like the work of a bully, right? So
you get the feeling if you would have made this short film and it didn't end, and then you found out that the guy almost would say you'd just back off from it.
Sure, exactly. But then to compound, make it even worse. I don't know. It's very, I don't know. I feel a little unsettled, but I'm not sure exactly why. And I'm curious to know more. So I'd like to know more about it.
Okay. Well, maybe watch this space. We might have a little update, maybe, or maybe not. I mean, maybe there's not. That's the thing. I feel like, I think that's the thing is, on the one hand, I think this is a really good example of a sort of modern, hyperbolic cultural artifact that makes a total mountain out of a molehill. Right?
Sure. Yeah. I'll agree with that.
And I don't want to be party to be to increase that.
Right, okay.
But at the same time, I am curious. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's like one of those things. It's like I don't like. I want to be aloof. I want to be above this because it is ultimately inconsequential. There's so many things out there of more interest.
Sure, yeah.
But I feel like a victim of my own curiosity. So yeah, first world problems.
Give into it.
Yeah.
Twist your rubber arm.
So then, what did you choose, Ron?
Well, I mean, just before we go into that, I will say that, I mean, say what you like about the Beaver trilogy. It certainly is a conversation piece. I mean, we've talked almost 40 minutes about that.
Yeah. And again, I'm conflicted about this. I don't know if we should or should not, but
yes, right. Yeah, we talk longer about the movie than the movie actually is, right? In the actual original pieces. So anyway, so I just sort of had no idea how to react to Dog Star Man, and I just went with the idea of a guy in the wilderness climbing a mountain, or walking in the woods by himself. And not in that case with his dog, but I took out the idea of the dog because I tried to find guy and a dog in the wilderness movies, but they're all family movies. They're all like
the only one that isn't, which I definitely would have played, but the thing is, I've already done it with Nick.
Oh, okay.
Would have been A Boy and His Dog.
Okay, I don't know that. What's that one?
That's like a dystopian science fiction film based on a novella by Harlan Ellison.
Oh, okay.
It's actually quite interesting.
Okay. I don't know that one, so I'll have to look that up. But yeah, so anyway, all the ones I was looking up.
A young Don Johnson stars in it.
Oh, okay. No, that sounds good. Yeah, because like anything that has a dog in it usually is like a family movie, right? So I was like, I don't really feel like doing a family movie. So anyway, so I
hate families.
Yeah, fucking families. Yeah. So anyway, but I mean, they're all kind of, there's not much to talk about with those types of movies. You know what I mean? Like the family movies about a dog, they're all kind of the same, and so I thought, okay, I'm just gonna pick go in just wilderness. So I just looked up wilderness movies, and then I came across one that I remembered about, which was Sean Penn's 2007 Into the Wild. I remember hearing about this movie, and it's sort of being on my radar, and I've hearing a lot about it, and it's sort of like highly respected and kind of like well rated and stuff, and I hadn't actually seen it, so I was like, all right, maybe this will be my opportunity to watch it. So anyway, so it's Into the Wild, 2007, written, directed by Sean Penn. Continuing our link with Sean Penn, which was totally unexpected. Based on the book by John Krakauer.
Yeah.
And based on the real life story of Chris McCandless, who was like kind of like a up and coming, like real, like kind of graduated, about to it was like graduated from Emory, like a big top university, top student, top athlete, about to go on to like Harvard Law and do all this stuff, and instead he kind of just gave everything away up, and gave all his money with $24,000, and then just up, and then went to Alaska, and then to live off the grid in the wilderness, and spoiler, died. So
dropped out, right? It's interesting that he dropped out, and you're thinking as well, it's like if it had been a story, because so this happened in like 92, 93, something like that.
Early 90s, yeah.
And you're thinking, if it had happened like 25 years, like basically, but when he was born, it would be an entirely less remarkable story, because there were fucking hordes of young people who dropped out right at that time and just went off after they watched Easy Rider and went off.
In like the 60s and 70s, you mean?
Yeah, like it became a whole counterculture based era. So it's interesting.
Sure.
Once upon a time, that was just like, yeah, that's what you do, man. And then 25 years later, people zoom in on it as like a very singular story, and you're thinking, well, not really. It's just the timing, I guess, right?
Sure. Yeah, I guess, yeah. So, but I guess also the people who dropped out didn't tend to be, I guess, I don't know if they would have been this type of.
Oh, I think a lot of people did. Yeah, I think obviously you also had just a load. You had a load of freaks and hangers on, and obviously, and they. But yeah, you would have had a lot of like.
But I think the other part that makes this interesting is because ultimately he died, and there's a bit of a mystery about the reason why he died. So that's why the book was about. Apparently, the guy who wrote the book was almost like a journalist, kind of like a detective trying to figure out what it is that actually killed him in the end, right? And apparently it's still kind of unsolved.
I had a chance to read the book before.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And the book was very. I mean, I like Jon Krakauer. He also did Into Thin Air, right? That book about the disastrous Everest expedition, and he was like investigating. And he did a really good book called Under the Banner of Heaven, which is about again Mormons. There was a murder in Mormon, and that book is like a history of Mormonism as well, and that's a really good read. If I were to recommend one Jon Krakauer book, could be Under the Banner of Heaven, which they turned into a TV miniseries, right? I think a couple of years ago with Andrew McCarthy, not Andrew.
Oh, okay.
What's his name? He was Spider-Man for like 5 minutes. Garfield.
Garfield, yeah.
I don't know if the miniseries is any good, but the book's excellent. And the Into the Wild book is, like you said, there's a lot of speculation about how he died exactly, like what led to his death.
And apparently Jon Krakauer is like one of the big trying to figure out what it is, and he's put forward several theories, but then he kind of retracts it and decides it's something else, and he retracts it.
It's all in the book, in the reprint. He comes back to it, and because there's other people, he finds all these quite obscure what's the word I'm looking for, scholarly kind of documents that you'd find in periodicals and things like a thesis on why the legume grows,
right.
And he'd find all these really obscure like studies and things like that. And whether it was the potato seed or some fungus that grew on the potato seed, and it just goes on and on and on and on. But it's more interesting than the film, that's for sure. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I'm thinking that maybe the story is a little bit more attractive than maybe just the the 60s and 70s dropouts, because it also has an air of mystery about it, and and so it's not just the dropping out. That's
no, and also I mean post the book as well, because originally it was an article for Outside magazine. That's how people first found out about Chris McCandless. And the thing that's kind of quite interesting is, some people were very, very sympathetic and some people were interesting, but the level of vehemence towards this guy from some people was kind of extraordinary. Because there's the argument to be made that he's just, a bit of a fool, right? That he went out there kind of, okay, there's an element of that, but some people are vehement, this fucking asshole didn't know what he was doing, he didn't understand, especially from local Alaskans. What a dick! And you're thinking, whoa, hold off there a little bit. I don't know quite why you're quite that angry about it.
Right. Well, but
I get why also it would be annoying for some people to hero worship him as well, right? Because
because to be fair, other people have sort of hero worshipped him and then followed in his footsteps and also died. So it's actually
right.
So there's been apparently several other deaths of people following in his footsteps who then also died. So much that they actually that's the other thing that makes it sort of an interesting story, was this sort of the magic bus, which is that he is in the middle of the wilderness and comes across a bus in the middle of nowhere, right? Which is sort of, and so much that he calls it the magic bus, and so much that they had to actually airlift the magic bus out of there because people kept making pilgrimages there because and then they kept getting lost and dying. So
was that post the film coming out maybe?
I think so. Yeah. So I read it somewhere.
Because the bus is there for good reason as well. Like if you read about it, it's something to do with long time ago. At some point, they were drilling for something, and they were trying to build like a highway out there, and for basically for housing for people who are out there working. They put, I think it was 3 or 4 of them originally, these buses, and they just stripped out the insides and put in bunk beds, and then it was just like it was for laborers like were working on this highway, and then they moved a couple of buses and they left one behind for some reason. So it's not really a magical reason that this bus is there. There's actually a really
but to be fair, if you were like dropping out and go to Alaska and you're hiking in the middle of nowhere and you come across a bus that has a bed and some utensils and stuff in it, I'd be like, this is fucking weird, right? You know, I wouldn't expect that to happen, right? So,
but he did know it was there because it was already a landmark. Yeah, because it was.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. I don't know how the film. Maybe the film, because there's a few conceits in the film which are not in the book, right? Like,
okay.
And I understand as well that it might have come between different printing. Oddly enough, like you said, this is basically a story about a guy who drifts around and meets different characters, etc. Blah blah blah, and then dies in an old school bus because he eats something the wrong thing, right? And I thought after reading, I thought the bit of the film that might be the most problematic would be how he died, right? I thought that would be the bit that would have dated since more things have come to light. But oddly enough, that kind of plays quite. They don't really specify what killed him, right? They don't really. So you can tell he's eaten the wrong thing. He gets sick and he just dies. So I thought that bit was actually quite well done because they kind of deliberately didn't go into detail, right? Why? But there's other things in there which are slightly more problematic. So like in the book, for example, John Krakauer brings a little bit of himself into it, and because he was like a mountain climber and stuff like that, and he had his own extremely hubristic brushes with death as a young man and stuff like that. And he brings in his own relationship with his father and stuff, and he speculates that there might have been some problem at home with the father figure as played by William Hurt in this film, right, and all that. But I don't think there's any of there's some full-on scenes of William Hurt being really abusive, right? In the film.
But apparently there has been some interviews with the sister that has confirmed that some of those things.
Okay. That's all I know.
The sister was apparently involved with the making of this film too. So.
Yes, but that's all I know. It's not in the book. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
It could have been. So as played by Jenna Malone, right? And she also has narration and stuff like that. Another character that isn't in the book is Kristen Stewart character. So at a certain point, he meets a pre-Twilight Kristen Stewart who falls out. She's fucking hot in this film, I have to say.
Well, she was apparently chosen for Twilight because of this movie. So
okay, right, yeah. No, I've never really had a thing for Kristen Stewart before, but man, she's hot in this film. I wasn't expecting. Like I said, the fool doesn't fuck her anyway. So there's
he's just the right age for you there.
Catherine Keener turns up, and Hal Holbrook turns up, and all these different. So it's like an odyssey, and he meets all the guys.
Vince Vaughn.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Again, I don't think it's because I feel I would have had the same reaction anyway. So I don't think it's unfair of me to compare to the book, right? But the book is actually a real page turner, and it's rather interesting, and you certainly, I mean, John Krakauer takes again a character which is potentially not. We were talking about the Beaver trilogy, like making man out of a mortar, but I think John Krakauer really takes what is of interest in the story, and he ties in all these other things as well, and it's a fascinating read. I would recommend reading Into the Wild. But in bringing it to the screen, it's, I don't know. I mean, we got to talk about Sean Penn, right? I mean, where Sean Penn is like earnest, right? I think is the word. Earnest to a fault. In fact, I could call this film Earnest Goes to Camp.
Earnest Goes to the Wild. Yes. Earnest Into the Wild.
Very Earnest Goes to Camp. So And so all his films, right, that he's made as director, I think they all have this like super earnest, soul searching tone, which I'm not saying it's inauthentic. I think it probably is authentic, but fuck is it annoying. Like and then on top of that, right, you put fucking Eddie Vedder singing.
I knew that was gonna get you. I knew. I get to see. I was like, I bet he's just like pulling his hair right now.
I didn't know. I didn't know it was Eddie Vedder. I was just, it starts, and then there's a song on the soundtrack, and I think, this song's a little bit annoying. And then the credit comes up, music by Eddie Vedder. I'm off, for fuck's sake. I didn't see that one coming. I didn't know that was the case.
As I was watching, I was like, "Oh, that's gonna bug you."
yeah, no, that didn't help. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Had you seen this movie before?
No.
Okay.
To be honest, I think I remember it coming out as well, and it was just, this is not a movie I would watch because I know it's directed by Sean Penn, and I know. We haven't even mentioned it stars Emil Hirsch, by the way.
Yeah, right.
No, it's just, I think what it is like, John Krakauer finds the stuff that's interesting about the story, and Sean Penn seems to have found all the stuff that's most annoying about a character like this, right? Like, the book really brings out the love of nature and like really, what it's like to just pit yourself and just get down to your core. Like, can you survive just as a human in this world and take all the other bullshit away and just live and be? But the film also tries to do that, but it does it in this man, I just want to go out there and it's all the shit and family and it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake, shut the fuck up. Like, it's so annoying. Emil Hirsch is so annoying. I like Emil Hirsch. I like Speed Race. I don't mind him. But that's that whole bit where he's talking to an apple. You're like the apple of my eye. And he looks at the camera and he's just like, fuck, I hope you fucking die in a bus in Alaska. Oh, you did? Great. Hooray. It's so annoying. And it's 2.5 hours long. But other than that, it's fine. How about you?
I don't know if I can follow that.
How did you get on with Into the Wild?
Well, I like Eddie better, so I got a better with that.
Okay, that helps, I guess. Yeah. You didn't have him crapping in your ear. Well, you did, but you like that for some reason. Yeah.
I definitely think it didn't need to be 2.5 hours long. It was really, really too long. Yeah, there's a lot of filler in there. I didn't mind it. I thought it was an okay story. I thought it was, again, I do think I think it's a good word, earnest. It's a little bit too, like, he really, really wants to do human dramas and to show, the triumph of the spirit and that kind of stuff. But it was a little bit too kind of saccharine and a little bit too like I don't know, like really trying hard to make us love it. And all like the voiceover was all this kind of poetry. It was poetic kind of language. I'm not sure if that was written in the book or not, but it was just kind of like he was really trying to make like a piece of art and stuff like that. But it got a little old after a while. I agree. Like, it didn't entirely hold my attention for the entire 2.5 hours, for sure. I mean, it was an interesting story. I think, Emil Hirsch did his best with, trying to, talk to an apple and talk to himself for 2.5 hours, pretty much. But it's a good looking movie. I thought it was well shot.
I mean, Sean Penn's got he's got all the connections. He's got the might of Hollywood behind him. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, I wish Sean Penn would take himself a little less seriously, though.
Yes,
I think that's
yes,
the thing.
that would be good.
That would be nice. Everything is just, he's got to be so serious with everything, right? So yeah.
In a way, it's almost too well shot as well, right? Because like everything like looks like it's at the magic hour and everything's beautifully.
That's true. You know, it's good that you mentioned it. Yeah.
You want a bit of rugged reality in there sometimes, right? Or you want
now that you mentioned that, it would have been, maybe it would have been a little more kind of like interesting if they'd done more gritty or kind of like handheld, stuff, that kind of stuff. And that would have added a different element to it, kind of thing. So, I mean, for some reason, like this movie is really, really like beloved. It's like on like, it's got like a 8.1 on IMDb. It's like top 250 movies of all time and stuff. So I thought it was okay. I certainly didn't love it, but I didn't hate it as much as you, though. So I think so. But I think it's it was it was kind of what I expected with the Sean Penn coming of age in the guy in the woods.
I felt forearmed, right? Like I didn't, apart from the Eddie Vedder thing blindsiding me, I didn't really expect I would like it, to be honest with you. But I didn't realize it was 2.5 hours long. I didn't realize the Eddie Vedder-ness of it. And then it's like because it looks like a Hallmark. It's like it feels inauthentic, and like and in a way I actually don't think, I think Sean Penn probably really does think these things and want to, but I don't know if he lacks the imagination or something. But and people who think this film is like, oh, are these people like, if they walked into a Hallmark card shop, would they like just have a heart attack or drop dead or something? Like, oh my god, like this is so deep and meaningful. Or, I don't quite understand the distinction between, because it does, like you said, it feels very saccharine and like, I don't know, like
it almost, like I say, the only thing is that he tries so hard to make it feel authentic that it goes all the way around to being inauthentic again, right? That it's just he tries too hard to make it something. I don't know. I'm not really sure if I can really. I was thinking about it this week. I was trying to find it hard to kind of like put into words my feeling about this movie, but it didn't strike the way I thought it would. Or no, that's wrong. It did strike the way I thought it would, but I was hoping it was going to do something different. You know what I mean? So,
right. Yeah. I think Sean Penn should do a director's cut as well, where, like, at the moment of
6 hours long.
It will at least that bit, like when he looks up at the sun and he has that realization, and it's like, and then he suddenly dies or whatever, and it's like, you should just add a little bit, just a last voiceover where he goes, "Why didn't I fuck Kristen Stewart?" That would make it better.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, it was. I mean, if you like these types of movies, I think it's a fairly good one, I guess. If you like, I
like these types of movies. I like road movies. I like people going out into the wilderness movies. I like. I might choose a road movie in response to this, but it's just, I don't know. I don't understand. At no point in production did anyone stop Sean Penn and like, the dude.
But I mean, it was relatively successful. I mean, people do like this movie. I mean, it's not just. I mean, other than us, I think we're more in the minority, to be honest. I mean, I didn't hate it as much as you, but I didn't love it either. But right. It was overblown a little bit. It was a little bit,
self-aggrandizing, I guess.
A little bit self-masturbatory, that kind of stuff, right? So
I don't blame in a way, I don't blame the family, because someone comes along and they kind of they want to make a film that puts your beloved son on a pedestal and all that. I get it from their point of view. They're going to be kind of bewitched by that to a certain point, but people grieving and had a trauma or whatever, they shouldn't necessarily I'm not saying I don't think the film exploits them in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, like, I can see why they went along with the whole thing, and so I no blame there, but it's someone else should maybe have. Yeah, I don't know. I dislike it, but I don't think it's. Yeah, I suppose that's one thing to say in its favor. Is it's not necessarily like a blemish. It's not a stain. It's not like it's not like shameful. It's not like exploitative. It's not like something that would upset.
And I don't think it's actually a bad movie. It's just sort of like it's just that kind of movie that maybe, yeah. So I don't know. I think it's exactly what Sean Penn wanted.
Oh, no doubt.
No doubt. Yeah. And yeah, so I don't think there was any doubt there. And I think, and a lot of people do like this movie. It's well rated. So, but yeah, I think it could have used a little editing, I think, and a little, and having someone give Sean Penn a little bit of the tough love, I think.
Just make Glover should have directed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so
or Trent Harris. Yeah. He could have just told him doing it three. Yeah. He could be like in like eating the berries in the woods and go, please don't keep me waiting.
There we go. Alternative universe. Yeah. So if you are one of our listeners, our viewers, and you really, really like Into the Wild, go away and watch another YouTube video. Thank you. Bye-bye.